Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Steven. I'm a fifth grade teacher, a graduate student, and someone who has spent a lot of time this semester thinking about why we don't do the things that we know help us. And that's really what this video is about. Not just what the research says, not just what the theories tell us, but that very human, frustrating gap between knowing what you should do and actually doing it consistently, especially when life gets hard. Over the past several months, I've been working through that gap in two very different contexts. First, in my own life, managing anxiety and overthinking while balancing a full time teaching job, a graduate degree, a marriage, and some serious family health news. And second, in my classroom, working with a 10-year-old student that I'll call John for the purposes of this video, who has internalized this belief that he simply cannot do academic work, no matter how much encouragement he receives. These two experiences, as different as they look on the surface, taught me the same core lessons, and that's what I want to share with you today. Whether you're someone who's managing your own stress and anxiety, a teacher or parent, trying to support a child who has stopped believing in themselves, or just someone who keeps telling themselves that they'll start that habit tomorrow, this video is for you. Because the truth is, the science of human development has a lot to say about why we get stuck, and more importantly, how we get unstuck. So let me start with my own story. I'm just turned 30 years old. This semester, I've been carrying a lot at once: a full time teaching position, a specialist degree program, my marriage, and the recent news that my grandfather, who has been the primary father figure in my life, has been diagnosed with cancer. I want to be clear: I understand the normalness of the struggles that I have, and I'm not at a crisis point. But my baseline anxiety has been sitting at about a 6 or a 7 out of 10 for most of the year. And the way it shows up for me really isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's lying in bed at night with my brain just not stopping. It's replaying conversations. It's anticipating problems that haven't happened yet. It's being physically present with the people I love, but mentally somewhere else entirely. Here's where the theory helped me. According to Erik Erikson's model of psychological development, I'm navigating two overlapping stages at the same time. Stage 6 is intimacy versus isolation. This is about building and sustaining deep, meaningful relationships. And stage 6 is generativity versus stagnation, the drive to contribute, to build something, and to feel like your life is moving in a purposeful direction. Both of these are live for me right now simultaneously. And here's what that actually feels like: it means I feel the pressure from every angle at once. Showing up for my wife, succeeding professionally, doing well academically, being present for my family. And that's not me being dramatic. According to the developmental psychology, that is exactly the hard work of this stage of life. Knowing that didn't make the pressure disappear, but it made it feel a lot less like a personal failure. Going into this, I already knew what helped me. I'd been in therapy, I knew breathing exercises worked, I knew journaling was useful. The problem was that I kept dropping these practices during the most stressful periods, which is exactly when I needed them the most. Miller, from our readings this semester, actually names this directly. He says the gap between knowing what helps and consistently doing it is itself a psychological challenge, one that requires intentional self regulation strategies and not just willpower. So, that's what I tried to build. I implemented two practices and tracked them across the semester. The first was a daily 10-minute worry journal each evening. I wrote down my biggest concerns for the day, and then I sorted them into two categories: one, what I can control, and two, what I cannot. Writing the worries down helped me create a separation between them and me. They went from living in my head on a loop to being something I could actually look at on a page. The second was what I called a worry window. It was a dedicated 20-minute block each day where I intentionally engaged with my anxious thoughts, paired with exercises like controlled breathing that I know work. The key was that outside of that window, when anxious thoughts came up, I just tried to redirect them. I told myself that I'd get to them later, and the hard part was making sure that I always did. This approach is grounded in behavioral modification principles, the idea that structuring when and how behavior occurs can change your relationship to it entirely. So here's what I noticed. On the days I did both practices, my anxiety was noticeably lower by the end of the day. The journal stuck more consistently than the worry window. I maintained it most days across the semester, and the breathing practice I got to about 3 out of the 5 days in a typical week. My biggest win was catching myself in the middle of overthinking and being able to name it in real time. And that was new for me, and it was a really big shift. My biggest honest failure were those high stress weeks. When everything piled up at once, these practices were the first thing that I threw out the window. I know that's exactly when they matter most, and that's the work that I'll still have left to do following this semester. So enough about me. Now let me tell you about John. Obviously, that's not going to be his real name, but he's a 10-year-old in my 5th grade classroom. John is not a quiet kid. He participates in class discussions, he's funny, he's socially connected, and clearly intelligent when you talk to him. But the moment he's asked to work independently or to sit down and produce something on his own, he shuts down. Work goes blank or not turned in. Pencil gets pushed aside. His go-to phrases are, I can't do this, I just can't get it, or I don't know anything. He's been in our RTI program since 3rd grade, and this year he moved to Tier 3. Multiple interventions, consistent parent contact and support, modified assignments, praise and encouragement, none of it was producing a lasting change for John. When I started looking at this through a developmental lens, I finally understood why. Erikson's 4th stage of psychological development spans roughly ages 6 through 12. The central conflict is really between industry, which is that feeling capable, productive, and competent, and the feeling of inferiority, that internalized belief that you are less capable than people around you. School is where the conflict plays out most directly. Kids are being evaluated constantly, compared to each other, and required to produce results on a daily basis. If a child doesn't accumulate enough positive, genuine experiences of success during this window, then they begin to believe that they simply can't do it. Not that they haven't done it yet, but they literally cannot. John wasn't being dramatic or lazy. He had just built up years of evidence in his own mind that effort doesn't lead to results. He had resolved his stage 4 conflict in the wrong direction. And generic encouragement wasn't going to fix that because he had already heard plenty of it. Erikson goes on to identify teachers as this key significant adult during stage 4. That means my role wasn't just instructional, it was also psychological, which was really hard for me to wrap my head around. So I designed 4 specific interventions over about 4 weeks, and they were as is. Week 1, I sat down privately with John during independent work time, and I just asked him questions in a really casual setting. What did he feel he was good at? I listened without redirecting. I was trying to name the competence he couldn't see in himself, which is exactly what Erikson says a significant adult needs to do. I was trying to find that thing that makes John realize what everyone else in his life sees in him. Also in week 1 and moving into week 2, I started with something simple by restructuring his assignments into clearly numbered micro steps, small enough that he could complete one in a few minutes and physically see his progress. The goal here was to create a genuine mastery experiences, not the appearance of success, but the actual experience of finishing something. Later in week 2 through week 4, I gave John a real classroom responsibility. I made him our materials manager, which essentially he collected and distributed supplies for the class. I know it sounds simple, but it gave him a meaningful role that his peers noticed, that I noticed, and his mom even emailed me to say that he came home talking about it. Throughout all 4 weeks, I shifted every piece of verbal feedback from outcome-based to effort-specific, which made me realize it's something that I do a lot with most of my students. But I had to move away from saying just good job for John or way to go, bud, like things like that. But instead, I tried to move on to things that were much more focused on what he was doing. Like, great job making sure your whole table got the supplies today. Or, I really like that you didn't give up on that assignment and continued to go through it. Things like that. Things that were very targeted to the decisions that he was making and the progress he was making in class to make it feel more meaningful to him. And I'll say, it was hard because the changes weren't dramatic, but they were real and they were pretty fast. John started completing these micro step assignments more consistently. He still struggled with accuracy, which was expected, but he at least was attempting, and that was new. By week 3, I was seeing fewer of his classic shutdown behaviors, his head on the desk, work pushed to the side. I started to see him actually thinking and trying his best to complete the tasks that were put in front of him. The moment that stays with me, after I acknowledged his persistence on a particular math assignment, he looked up and said, I actually finished it. And not like I got it right, just that I finished it. That industry aspect of this stage was really starting to take effect or take root for John. His mom emailed me later that day saying that he was coming home talking about his classroom job. His peers were complimenting him. And just overall, something started to shift in John right around week 3 of implementing these practices. And then here's what really stuck with me when I looked at both experiences side by side. John needed a trusted adult to name his competence and to tell him that he was doing well before he could believe it in himself. I, on the other hand, needed structure and external accountability to actually do the practices that I already knew worked. Different ages, different challenges, but overall it was the same underlying truth. We don't grow in isolation. Erickson was right about that across every single stage he described. The relationships around us aren't just nice to have, but they are actually developmentally necessary for us. And there's also something that Lally and Valentine French pointed out, where they describe about adult thinking being called post-formal thought. Right? It's the ability to hold multiple perspectives at once, to sit with a complex idea or just general life complexities and the contradictions of it. And that's something I experience constantly. It helps me be a better teacher because I can see situations from many angles, but it works against me in my personal life when it turns into cycling through every possible outcome of a problem without ever really landing anywhere. Understanding that about myself and that this is a feature of how I think and not necessarily a flaw has been genuinely useful for me. So really, what's the takeaway here? First, big one is the gap between knowing what helps and actually doing it isn't a problem of willpower. It's a structure problem. John didn't need more praise. He needed task design so he could experience finishing. I didn't need to know more about anxiety. I needed time and a format to actually engage with it. Structure is what bridges knowing and doing. Second is catching yourself already in progress. One of the most meaningful shifts that I personally experienced this semester was noticing my overthinking while it was happening. Not stopping it perfectly, just naming it. That awareness is the first step in every behavior or behavior change model in developmental psychology. And then finally, small wins are not a consolation prize. They are a mechanism. John saying that I actually finished it, it's not a small thing. Me maintaining a journal through the hardest weeks of the semester is not a small thing. These are the building blocks over time that change how a person sees themselves, which is really the goal of life in general for me. So, if you're managing your own anxiety or overthinking, here's what I'd suggest. Don't wait for the right time to start. Start with a journal. 10 minutes tonight. Write down your biggest worries and just sort them, control or no control. You'll be amazed how many things you realize truly just are out of your control and you just have to go with. Give your anxious thoughts a window, a time, and a place so they stop showing up everywhere else. And get one external accountability source, whether that's a therapist, a partner, a friend, an app. The knowledge alone won't be enough. I've learned that about myself, and I think it's true for most people. If you're a teacher or a parent watching this, shift your feedback. Move from great job to I noticed you kept going. Give the child in your life real responsibility, not a pretend one, something that actually matters and other people notice. And really restructure tasks so they can genuinely finish something. The experience of finishing builds more confidence than any amount of encouragement you could ever give. And so here's what I want to leave you with. Growth happens in the gap between knowing and doing. That's where John's story lives, and that's where mine lives too. And it's probably where yours lives as well. The theories in developmental psychology, Erikson stages, post-formal thinking, behavioral modification, they don't just explain what's happening to us, they give us a language for it. And once you have a language for something, it stops feeling like a personal failure and starts feeling like a stage of life you're working through. That shift matters more than it sounds. So here's going to be my call to action. And I mean this as a genuine question, not just a throwaway ending. What is one thing you already know helps you that you've stopped doing? Not a new habit, not a new strategy, something you've already proven works that you've let go of during a hard season or a hard part of life. Start there. Just one thing. If you feel like sharing it, add that on your comment to this video. That would be great. And I would really genuinely love to hear where you're starting. Thank you for watching. And don't worry, we've all got this.